As the winter is fast approaching, we could all use a hat or two to protect us from the cold. In this video, I'm going to show you how I made two hats, a feral one and a viral one, the cat ear beanie. I know I'm a bit late to the trend, but I really wanted to make one for myself. If you wish to also learn a third version, a fully fashioned one, which I made using partial knitting, you will find a 22 minutes video showing the entire process on my Patreon. As with most knit projects, everything begins with some planning and samples. Here you can see some of the initial developments where I was testing my yarns and tension. This is the punch card I used in just 2 colors. I use this beanie to take all the measurements. For the feral hat, I want to have a rolled rib as well. The total length of the hat is 22 centimeters plus a 5 centimeters rib, and the width is 50 centimeters. I have learned the gauge by measuring a swatch, and it is 3.3 stitches and 3.3 rows per 1 centimeter. After knowing the gauge, I can convert centimeters to stitches and rows by multiplying the number of stitches and rows per 1 centimeters with my measurements. It is time to cast on my 1x1 rib, and I will do a waste yarn cast on. If you are not sure how to cast on a rib with or without a waste yarn, I will link a video below. In total, I knitted 25 rows of 1x1 rib and made sure to knit the last row at a looser tension so I can use my transfer carriage to transfer all stitches from ribber bed to main bed. Before beginning the pattern, we'll increase my tension, which I will use for the body, and knit 1 row on main bed only. It's time to begin the pattern. Insert the punch card in the card reader and lock it on row 1 by moving the little button to the circle symbol. Set the carriage knob to KC and knit the first row to bring needle in position as per the first row of the punch card. Unlock the card by moving the little button to the triangle in the middle. Insert the second yarn in yarn feeder B and press the MC cam. The needles that have been brought forward in the previous row will knit with the yarn in feeder B and the rest with the yarn in feeder A. From now on, I will change or swap the yarns to create stripes. I'm paying attention to the needle position while looking at a photo of the punch card to know when to do that. But to plan stripes and to make your life easier, you can also write down the row number where you want to do that and what color you want to use. It is important to know that the brother will read the card 7 rows below the row in view. After finishing the pattern, I will knit a few more rows using the background color so I can have 72 rows in total. I like to do a chain stitch cast off, so I will manually knit a loose row and then use my lash tool to cast off. Here's the hat off the machine. I really love the wintry look of this pattern with these colors. Since this hat is literally a rectangle, I have to gather the top to create the shape. It took me a bit to figure out how to gather the top or how many stitches to catch. I initially caught every single stitch, but when pulling it tightly, it was too much to be able to close it up. In the end, I skipped some of the stitches and that looked much better. I knew from the beginning that I wanted to add a pom-pom, so I didn't really care how perfect this would end up looking. I don't have any clips of doing the seam, but I use a mattress stitch to achieve, which I think is the nicest result. A very important detail to mention here is that if you want to roll the rib as well, make sure to do the seam on the opposite side so that the seam is not visible when rolling the rib up. Here I'm tying the loose ends using a darning needle. I like to use one of the ends and go around other loose ends to catch them in. Like I mentioned before, I will add a pom-pom. Here you can see my improvisation to make one. I wrapped around all the yarns I used at once. I then made sure to secure them tightly, and I began cutting the ends as neatly and evenly as possible to create a pom-pom as round as possible. Last step is attaching it to the hat, and I just sewn it going through it using one of the loose ends inside the hat. As I used some wool and cashmere, I also washed the hat to fluff it up, and I did that in the washing machine on a cold quick cycle. And here's the finished product. In the second part of this video, I will show you how I made a cat ear beanie, which is also super easy to make. Again, you have to knit a rectangle, so there's no shaping, just some basic calculations. I wanted to knit it fully on a single bed, so to create the rib detail at the top, I manually reformed stitches. This is a chunky yarn, so I had every other needle in work to allow for the larger stitches and not break my needles. Here's my fabric, and I'm ready to begin with the first seam, which will turn it into a tube. I will do mattress stitch, which is the best seam in my opinion, as you cannot even see it. The next seam is closing it up to the top. I've already finished half here. I began in the center and left a long tail so I can continue on the other side. I'm going back and forth like so, aligning the stitches. The edge will be rolled as well to reveal the purl stitches. And as you can see, I made a little mistake here, as when I rolled the edge, you can see the seam on the right side. So I had to undo it and do a mattress stitch from the purl side. First fit check to decide how much of the edge will be turned and to also know to what point I need to undo the seam. Okay, now that is fixed, I realized that the edge is a little bit too loose as well, so I decided to do one row of single crochet around it, which made it look much better. Second fit check, you can notice the ear on the right side of the screen looks a little bit better than the one on the left side. I made sure that the two sides are even by folding the hat in half, and then I marked where I should finish the stitch with a pin. All I did to achieve that was to chain stitch the corner like so using the latch tool. Of course, the first thing I had to do was to go and show my kitten that we are twins now. I'm very pleased with this fluffy hat as well, super easy and so cute. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've learned a couple of things and perhaps feel inspired to make a couple of hats for yourself. Let me know which one is your favorite, and don't forget that you can learn a third version over on my Patreon. Bye bye!